inquiry, and I call Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I beg to move that leave be given to bring in a bill to make provision for establishing an independent public inquiry into UK involvement in Israeli military operations in Gaza, to require the inquiry to consider any UK military, economic or political cooperation with Israel since October 2023, including the sale, supply or use of weapons, surveillance aircraft and Royal Air Force bases, to provide the inquiry with the power to question ministers and officials about decisions taken in relation to UK involvement and for connected purposes. Madam Deputy Speaker, in the aftermath of the Iraq War, several attempts were made to establish an inquiry surrounding the conduct of British military operations. The government of the day spent many years resisting those attempts and those demands for an inquiry. However, they could not prevent the inevitable, and in 2016 we had the publication of the Chilcot Inquiry, which Sir John Chilcot had undertaken over several years. The report found serious failings within the British government, which ignored the warnings of millions of ordinary people who had been protesting on the streets against the invasion. I was leader of the Labour Party at that time when the report came out, and I apologised on behalf of the Labour Party for the catastrophic decision to go to war in Iraq. History is now repeating itself. Over the past 18 months, human beings have endured a level of horror and inhumanity that should haunt us all forever. Entire families wiped out, limbs strewn across the street, mothers screaming for their children buried under the rubble, human beings being torn to pieces, doctors performing amputations without anaesthetic, children picking grass and dirt from the ground thinking they might find something edible to eat. The survivors will face lifelong mental health consequences which will go on for generations. Home by home, hospital by hospital, generation by generation. We are not just witnessing a war, we are witnessing a genocide, this time live-streamed all over the world. Today, the death toll in Gaza exceeds 61,000, and at least 110,000 people, or 1 in 20 of the entire population, have been severely injured. 2 Israeli officials are now wanted by the International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity. Madam Deputy Speaker, Britain has played a highly influential role in Israel's military operations. First, Britain has been supplying weapons to Israel, weapons that are being used to bomb the people of Palestine. This, of course, started with the previous Conservative government, but is continued with the current Labour government. In fact, between October and December 2024 alone, more arms export licences were granted than were approved by the previous government for the whole of 2020 and 2023. In September 23, the government suspended some licences but continued to allow the supply of F-35 components to the global pool. The Foreign Secretary has accepted the fact that F-35 jets are being used in violation of international humanitarian law, yet at the same time admits those parts go into the global supply chain and could therefore go to Israel. They know full well the implications. By justifying the continued licensing of these parts, our government is admitting its complicity in what are, quite clearly, war crimes. I find this truly astounding. The government is telling us loud and clear that its participation in this programme is more important than upholding international law and the Convention on Genocide. It's very simple. Until this government ends the sale of weapons to Israel, it will remain complicit in the mass murder of Palestinians in Gaza at the present time. Secondly, many of us have repeatedly been asking for the truth regarding the role of British military bases in Cyprus. Since October 23, military cargo has been airlifted from RAF Akrotiri to Israel. This cargo has often travelled to Cyprus from US military bases in other parts of Europe. Meanwhile, RAF shadow aircraft have also been conducting nightly surveillance flights over Gaza. And when the Prime Minister visited RAF Akrotiri last December, he was telling troops the whole world and everyone back at home is relying on you. Quite a bit of what goes on here can't necessarily be talked about all of the time. We can't necessarily tell the world what you're doing. In a recent report by the British Palestine Committee, it says the UK government is engaged in military actions without being subject to parliamentary scrutiny, and that these actions implicate its institutions and officials in the gravest breaches of international law. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, over the past 18 months, our questions have been met with evasion, obstruction and silence, leaving the public in the dark over the way in which the responsibilities of government have been discharged. Transparency and accountability are the cornerstones of democracy. The public deserves to know the scale of the UK complicity in these atrocities. Any meaningful inquiry would require the cooperation of the government, both governments, the Conservative and Labour Party governments, involved in decision-making processes since October 23. The inquiry needs to ask what arms have been supplied to Israel, which of these weapons have been used in Gaza and the West Bank. Is the government's position that it cannot or will not bring the F-35 programme in line with UK's legal obligations? What is RAF Akrotiri being used for? Is it being used as a route for weapons that are being deployed in Gaza? How many US Air Force flights have flown from RAF Akrotiri to Israel since October 23? Have Israel F-35 jets been stored and repaired at RAF bases in Akrotiri or anywhere else? What video footage does the government have of the war zone from RAF flights? Will it release this footage? What intelligence has been passed on to Israel? What legal advice has the government received over an assessment of genocide, and when will it publish this advice? Mr. Speaker, I want to finish by reminding the House that in October 23, many of us called for an immediate ceasefire, for the bombing to stop, and for the release of all hostages. We condemned those attacks, but expressed alarm over the wholly disproportionate nature of the response. We warned that we were witnessing the beginning of the total annihilation of Gaza, and we pleaded with political leaders on both sides to call for peace. Today, some politicians have finally begun to backtrack a bit. Perhaps they're frightened of the consequences and of their own inhumanity. If there was any integrity in this, all those that support the operation of the military there would weep for the 61,000 Palestinian lives that have been lost, buried under the rubble, and the moral cowardice of politicians in this country and others that have allowed this to go on. Today, we teach children about history's worst war crimes against humanity. They're asked to reflect about how those crimes ever came about. Our future history books will report with shame those that had the opportunity to stop this carnage but failed to act to achieve it. And so, Madam Deputy Speaker, we will continue our campaigns in this House and outside because we're appalled at what is happening. Our demonstrations, the huge demonstrations in this country and all around the world, are made up of people of all ages, all faiths, and actually quite a wide range of political opinion. They're united with the simple human request that we stop the bombing and save lives, and we stop that bombing by no longer supplying any weapons to do it. We will continue to campaign for truth, for accountability, and most importantly, for peace and for justice for the Palestinian people who've been denied all of that for far too long. Today, if this bill is agreed, and I hope it will be, this will be a step forward in opening up the murky history of what's gone on, the murky arms sales and the complicity in appalling acts of genocide.
Hear, hear.